I love the smell of burning cow poop. All right, guys, so here's what we got going. I pulled those wear pads off the bottom, that UHMW. I think what I'm gonna do is take the plasma with a scarfing tip on it and scarf these off. And then I will build a bracket that goes the whole width instead of just 3 individual brackets. I'm gonna do one big bracket. It'll come up, it'll break down, and then back down. So it's kind of a U-channel piece, and that will hang on our frame, and I'll build it the same way so that it welds in 3 different places, and I'll still have our wear pads on the inside, but I want to build it in one piece. It'll be a lot more solid. We'll weld it these same 3 places, but it'll be one solid piece. It'll just be stronger, more rigid. So I'll go ahead and grab the plasma, we'll get it set up, and I'll scarf these off. Alright guys, apologize, the camera died in the middle of scarfing these off. So you can see how messy they look. But if you take a hammer, they just pop right off. Maybe. Might have to use a chisel on that one. So we'll go ahead and get these cleaned up. You see we tried not to gouge the corner and the surface material, and we'll go ahead and clean this up. Another thing I wanted to show you, this is one of the problems you run into. There's a little bit of warpage going on there, so I'll probably have to clamp that down to the table and let it cool, and hopefully it'll pull it back into position to where it needs to be. But I probably won't do that until I weld the brackets on, because the brackets are just going to heat it up again and it'll probably do the same thing. So we'll weld it out and then we'll clamp it to the table. The table kind of acts like a heat sink and it pulls the heat out of it. So usually if I clamp it to the table and get it straight, the table pulls the heat out, and then I just let it sit till it's cool, and usually it's okay. So that's the plan. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up, and then I will get freaking spider. When I get to the point where I'm ready to show you guys the bracket, top and bottom, we'll come back to you. All right guys, I think I got an idea on what I want to do here. I do have our part drafted up, so we're getting ready to cut. Fire in the hole. Okay, so we're going to burn some 1/4-inch aluminum there. That's going to be our bracket that goes across the top. You see I've got these cleaned up best I can. So once I get that all burned and cleaned up, I'll come back to you and show you what I'm thinking. All right, looky here. So I've decided to use the fireball table, the dragon wagon, to fit up this part. So I was able to put a couple fence blocks in, slam it up against those, use a couple fixture clamps here to clamp it down. I do have some fireball shims inside here because the ID here is 1 15/16. I was hoping it was closer to 2, but it's not. So I went with 1 15/16. That should give us enough room there that it will still slide okay. That'll give us about 3/16 play. I've got it all fit up. I've got a perfect fit here. Table is turning out awesome. One thing I could have done different was put it in the table opposite of what I did, 180 degrees, but that's okay. You live and you learn. Okay, I'm gonna grab my chair, sit down here, and go ahead and weld this out. The other good thing is I can leave it in here while it cools, and that should keep it nice and straight. So with aluminum, we don't want to just run this or it's going to end up being a banana. So I'm going to run a little bit, and then I'll run a little bit over here, maybe a little bit in the middle, and I'm going to bounce around. Alright guys, let's give you an update. I've built this part 3 times now. That's my life. So the first one I built, I wasn't able to break. It was too wide. I couldn't squish it down to where I was getting the right dimension. Scrap that one. Second one, I bent the first leg, welded on the second. Looked great, but the dimensions were wrong. Something threw me off with... Anyway, it's a long story. I got thrown off by the radius on the top tube. I've decided that I'm going to build this next part in 3 separate pieces. I've got the first piece welded on, but this stinking table is awesome. I just can't believe I've gone as long as I have without using a fixture table. Specifically, this fixture table. I'm a huge Fireball tool fan. I just think they build quality stuff. I know a lot of people want to sit and balk and say, oh, well, a lot of it's made in China. Well, okay, maybe some of it is made in China, but all the stuff that matters is made in America. And Jason's a smart guy. He's going to farm out as much work to the cheapest person that can build his parts for him as possible. He's a businessman, so I don't blame him for that. As long as the tool is within spec and does what I need it to do, okay, some parts are made in China, whoop-de-doo. To me, I just want it to function. And obviously I do like supporting American business, but this is kind of how business works nowadays, you know. Sometimes it's cheaper to manufacture some parts in other countries and have them shipped in. It's just the way it is. I'm almost positive that the tabletops are made in America. But anyway, enough of that. So I got this first piece welded out. I've got the spool gun running like a dream. Right now I'm at 21 volts and 370 on the wire feed speed, and I really like how it's running. So I'm just letting this cool right now. Then I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to weld the other side on. So you can see I've got this rigged up here. So I've got a couple clamps clamping this down. I've got some 4-inch blocks and then a 1/4-inch shim on top of that. These blocks are pretty stinking handy even when you're not using them for a fixture block. So I've also got these pushers pushing up against the fence blocks right here, just keeping it solid, and it is solid. So I'm going to let this cool, and then I'm going to flip it around, weld the other side. When I get to that point, I'll come back and we'll weld a little bit, and I'll give you guys a look. I sure like being able to clamp this stuff down. Make sure it doesn't move. Okay, we'll let that cool. Alright guys, little update for you. Got this tacked on, I checked the fit, and elevation's going to be just right. So the next thing to do is going to be to weld this on. So I'm going to just weld this. I'll stitch weld this on. I'll weld the sides here and then a long stitch on each one of these, and then maybe a small stitch here in this valley. Then I got to let it cool, and then I need to add these UHMW pads back on it, and I got to put those on the inside here. So I think what I've got to do is mark these holes. Hopefully I can get a transfer punch up there. I'm going to weld it out, and then I'll just roll it over. I'll pull a measurement for each one of these holes and lay it out, and then hope that I'm close enough. All right, here we go. Okay, Got that stitch welded on. Pretty happy with that. Okay, so now I've got to let that cool, and then I can get the pads bolted on once I drill these holes. So it's going to take me a minute for this, so I'll get these holes drilled and then we'll get the pads on. I'll come back to you. All right guys, time for an update. So let's show you guys what we've got done here. I went ahead and drilled those holes. So these are all going to fit. These are actually going to go up inside here. But I do got to get some more hardware, so that's kind of at a standstill. So I thought, okay, well, what should I do until I can get hardware? Because all the hardware stores are closed right now. So I think what I want to do, so I decided I would go ahead and cut the UHMW that goes up in here. This is 1/4 inch UHMW. If you've never seen UHMW, it's an acronym for U something H something M something W something. It's an acronym for some fancy word for plastic, but it's really slippery, and they use it in industrial settings a lot for things that need to slide. So we're gonna rip a piece of this at 6.5 inches. It'll be 26 inches wide, and then we'll go ahead and put it in the brake and bend it. And then I think I'm gonna rivet it to this. I gotta see how that works out. We've got to attach it to that somehow, so that's what I'm thinking. So let's go see if we can rip this. All right guys, I want to give you an update here. I've got the door put on the frame. I'm under the gun on this one, so I had to just kind of turn the camera off and hurry and get the top bracket done. It's done. I'll walk you through what it looks like and what I've done. And I've also started on these bottom brackets. So this is what they look like. You can see I've riveted the inside there, but you can see they're countersunk so they won't rub. And then I used screws on the sides because I couldn't get the rivet gun in there. So these brackets, the reason there's only a wear pad on the bottom and the side is because there's a wear pad right here on the inside of the door where it slides. It'll make more sense when I show you. So these will just weld here, and that keeps the door from moving. So basically, the door is welded on. If you have to take the door off to work on it, you've got to cut these, and then you'll be able to pull the door off. But there shouldn't be a reason for that unless something's broken. So I'm going to go ahead and start welding these on. I'm going to tack them on first, and then I want to stand the door up, slide the door back and forth, make sure everything's good, and then we'll go ahead and weld them out. So I'll walk over there and I'll show you guys what the top bracket looks like. Okay, so I'm not done. These bolts right here, I had to use screws to go through to hold the wear pads on. You can see the wear pad in there, and it's top and side, and then there's one that's attached to the frame. So it's kind of the same system as the bottom. Hopefully you can see that. So I think it turned out good. We've just got to get those bottom brackets on so that we can check it back and forth, slide it, and make sure that everything's smooth, and we can weld those out. Once that's done, then the door is basically fixed, and all that's left is these are toast. So I'm gonna have to cut those off, burn some new ones of those, and weld them out. I think I'll be able to repair this. It's worn right here where the pin was slamming back and forth, but I think I can build that back up. And I did find one more crack that I have to repair right there. So that's where we're at. Let's get these brackets tacked on and press forward. I do have to build the other two of these brackets, so I'll go ahead and I'll get those other two built, and then we'll come back, we'll get these tacked on. I got my piece of UHMW in there, and now I'm just going to drill 2 holes to hold that bottom piece in. This is something that you're never going to see because it'll be on the bottom of this gate. So I'm not measuring it out. I'm just kind of eyeballing center and going for it. Sole purpose of this is just to hold it in place. Hold the wear pad where it needs to stay. Once I do that, I take a countersink bit, countersink the UHMW so that the rivet fits past flush. Hopefully you can see that. Rivet gun. Sometimes it's a little tight getting it in there. Boom. So that's how I'm keeping my wear pads in place on the bottom. Flush, should never touch that unless this wears out. And then all you have to do is drill these 2 out, cut a new wear pad, grab 2 new rivets, and rivet it in place. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this other bracket built. When we get all those done, we're tacking them on, we're test fitting it, we'll come back to you. All right, so like I said, I'm gonna try to align these. I'll probably align the outside edge of this with the inside edge of this, just to keep it consistent. We're ready to stand this up and try it. So here we go. Okay. So it slides, but it doesn't quite slide like I want it to. And I do believe it's because this is tweaked. So I am gonna have to clamp it down to the table and lift up on it, see if I can bend this straight. I'm just gonna put a level on it and see how far I've gotta go to get it straightened out. It's not bad, but when you're using a horse trailer, you don't want to be fighting it. And a lot of times you're in a hurry. So we got some modifications we need to do. All right, let's go ahead and get this back on the table. We'll see if we can get it bent back straight. It's always something. Whew, that burned about an hour and a half. So I put it on the table, clamped it down, pulled on it with the crane, tweaked it straight, which was great, other than the fact that it cracked the tube. So then I had to pull the door back off, re-weld the crack, clean it up, put it back on, tack these back on. Now here we are. We're gonna go ahead and weld these. I swear every project I have lately is like a big swift kick in the gonads. I love the smell of burning cow poop. I'm not sure why I can't find my wire brush in this nice, clean work environment. All right, so like I said before, these brackets are not structural. They're just a keeper, basically, to keep the door on the frame. It's not like it's got to have a huge amount of structural integrity. It just needs to be strong enough to hold the door on. So now that that's done, the last order of business, that's not true. I got 2 last orders of business. I got to fix this crack, and I'm just going to fix it while I'm here because it's in the perfect position. So I got to hit it with a wire wheel, maybe grind it out a little bit. Looks like there's another one here. That's fantastic. And there. Goodness, this is the gift that just keeps on giving. All right, so I'm going to hit these with a wire wheel. I'll hurry and weld those up. And then we're going to stand it up. We'll check it one more time, make sure it slides. And then we're ready to fix the handle situation. All right, guys, we got the door set up here. Ground cable's hooked to that. Whoops. Anyway, slides in and out. I burned 3 of these little eyes, and we're gonna go ahead and get these tacked on. See if we can get this to line up. There's supposed to be 3 of them on there. There was only 2. You could see where another one was, and it broke off. So we're gonna see if we can fix it right. I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can get this tacked on here. I've got to leave some room for weld. The best way to do this is just going to be stick the pin in. All right, guys, I got these fit. I'll try to give you a look here. It is a little bit snug, but all I have to say is goodness. All right, so we got our pin finished. It's a little bit snug, but it'll break in. That's good and snug. You want it snug so that it doesn't vibrate, because with aluminum, when it vibrates, it just sits and hammers and wears it out because it's so soft. So if you can make it snug, it's a little better off. We repaired all of our cracks throughout, rebuilt the top end, rebuilt the bottom end. We put wear pads in all of our brackets, top and bottom. We repaired the 2 holes in the bottom structure. I do have to put the side bracket on so that they can put it back on their trailer, but I think it's done. I'll probably grease this top and bottom with some silicone grease so that it slides a little easier. Should be good. So that was quite a task. The old Miller ran fantastic though. The spool gun ran awesome. Didn't give me one fit. No hiccups. That was a purchase that I'm definitely going to use in the future, especially if I get stuff like this. For you to do TIG on something like this, it would just take so much longer. As always, hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Hope you guys have a splendid week. See you on the next one.